Hey everybody, Chef Paul here, along this week with Chef Sinead and our special guest, Chef Janine, is going to be joining us throughout the class. Hey Chef. And so Chef Janine's got a wonderful presentation we're going to go over together on dessert trios and do's and don'ts and all those kind of fun things. So it's going to be amazing. And because week 12, as you all know, because you're all, pros at this now, week 12 is a short week. We end on Sundays in week 12. So we are going to talk a little bit about week 12 and week 11 right now, because the assignment this week is to do a sketch. And it's not just like a quick sketch like I mentioned last week where you would do it between the stoplight on your way from work to home. You want to make sure you put a little time and effort into this so that we can actually see what you are planning. And of course, plans change, and that's okay. But this week we'll be talking about the sketch, and I will show you how to do one on the Google Drive. Why did I say the Google? Now I get that in my head. Google Drive. And I will also show you some examples of sketches, just Google images, things like that you can see just to get an idea. Not asking any of you guys to be Picasso or an artist in any way, but just do your best and take your time so that you do a clear drawing. It's really a nice footprint or roadmap to your assignment for week 12. So we'll cover all those details. We'll go over Chef Jeannie's presentation. I'm sure Chef Sinead is going to have some wonderful things to add to this as well. And we'll move on. So this week, we're just finishing up actually because it ends tomorrow. You guys are doing deconstructed desserts, and I've seen some really good examples. I sent a message out yesterday because I was a little concerned because I wasn't seeing too many submissions. So remember, today is the last day to submit until 11:59 p.m. Central Time to get your work in still with on-time credit, right? So you don't want to lose that 15% for being a day late or a minute late or 2 days late. So please get that in today. It's really, really not that complicated when you start to break down a deconstructed dessert. And for those of you that missed the live session last week, make sure you are watching the archive because we had some really great tips for you. And of course, there's 3 of us here. You can email us, message us, all you want about questions, for next week and for deconstructed desserts, even if you're at a loss. But we want to make sure that you guys get that in because it is a lot of fun and it's really delicious. And it's something, you do really well. You can add that to your portfolio, which we talk about often. Make sure you take a lot of really good pictures and save them. Chef Sinead, I'm going to give this to you. What have you observed so far?
So similar thing as far as like submissions. I don't know what's going on. I'm looking through who all is in this class. I have a good bit of your submissions, but keep them coming in. If there's anything kind of like stopping you from wanting to turn it in, reach out if you've got any questions or anything. Just go ahead and let us know, and then we can kind of give you a hand and guide you in the right direction. But I see you guys having a lot of fun. I'm excited. Not everybody's done the Black Forest. I've seen tiramisu. I've seen lemon meringue pie. So I've seen apple pie. So you guys are having a lot of fun with it, and that's what I really like to see. You're doing a good job, like having an idea of, how you want to break down a dessert into different components and then putting that on the plate. Plating is tricky. It takes time to get used to. It takes, time to like really figure out how to flow on a plate and how to like get your thoughts out onto that plate easily. And I see a lot of good things so far. I heard before class started the mousse, kind of getting the chocolate chips. So we're definitely going to get into that because I did notice that some chocolate chips going on in the mousse. So we'll, as class goes on, kind of discuss what's going on there. But how are you guys feeling about it? I know, like I said, I know a lot of you guys have it. How are you feeling about this week's deconstructed desserts?
For me, it was frustrated. I'm being honest. I'm sorry to tell you. It was very frustrated. The play came out. You're going to see Chef Sienna. I need to redo it. I'm not comfortable with it. I submit it because, it's part of the week, but I was not comfortable with it.
Okay, Annabelle, so to address the issue with the mousse, and it's okay if it doesn't work out, right? We can still make it again. We can make it again until we get it right. And then there's also different mousse formulas out there. And some people like to use like a chocolate whipped cream, very light and quick mousse. Some people will add gelatin to stabilize that mixture. And then some people, like what we were doing in class, is we're doing the classic French, the pâte à base base. So we were whipping egg yolks and then adding heated sugar to it. So softball stage sugar. So here's where some things can go wrong. So a little bit of troubleshooting. If you're doing the pâte à base base, where you're actually adding 240 degrees sugar to your whipping egg yolks for the base, if you take the sugar to 250 degrees, you start to go too hot. you're going to cause that mixture to seize really quickly, and it's going to be very gummy like a caramel and really tight. And then when you try to fold in your chocolate mixture and then your heavy cream, you're going to see that it gets really stiff and sometimes chunky even, because you have hard crystallized sugar in there. Sometimes you even get like chunks, like little stones. So being careful with the temperature of the sugar is really crucial.
I monitored the temperature. It went to that temperature. It was not the sugar. I think that I not put enough the heavy cream. So when it came out creamy, but when I take it out in the freezer and the fridge to construct the plate, it was hard for me to scoop it out. So the sugar, the temperature, I put the thermometer, it reached the 250 soft bowl. It was great. But what I made the whipped cream, so it was not enough. It was not enough. So I think that was the problem, the whipped cream mixture.
Not enough because you were short? You didn't have enough?
I think that it was shorter. Yeah, I think that was not enough to for it. But I take the mixture, the right mixture. I don't know what is going on with that.
Okay,
But I think that was the thing.
Okay, that makes sense, because if you didn't have enough cream to lighten it up, you're adding all that air when you're folding it in, and it is all about the right temperature. So if you get the sugar temperature right with the eggs, then you're golden there. And then having the chocolate added in, for some people that may have had chocolate chip mousse, sometimes that happens when you add the chocolate really quickly, and you don't get into the bottom of your mixer if you're adding it that way to fold it in quickly. Also, if your chocolate gets too cool after it melts, or if your pâte à bâton actually gets too cold, when you put the two together, it can seize if you don't get it in there quickly enough. And then the whipped cream, like you're talking about, that's going to lighten the whole thing. That's what gives you that cloud-like feel to it. And you have to also remember that the cream is like 36% fat. You have fat in the chocolate from the cocoa butter, and then you have your fat from your egg yolk. So there's a lot of fat in there. So even if you make it correctly, all the way through, everything is spot on, you put it in the refrigerator, it's going to be pretty firm. Not firm to the point where you couldn't scoop it, but it will be firm because all that fat sets up in the refrigerator. So if you want to try it again, absolutely free to do that, and just focus on all the air that you're incorporating along the way and making sure your temperatures are correct all the way. And send me the pictures of the one that you did if you haven't uploaded them already, so that I can see like all the steps, because sometimes just having that visual makes it a little easier to be like the detective and figure out what went wrong. Chef Jeannie, do you have any advice?
So is Chef Sienna give me some time to redo the narrative, because I did it once, so I already submitted.
Okay.
So I need to redo the narrative. That she can. I'm going to, when I finish the class, I'm going to redo it. She can give me some time to she rate it, appreciate it.
Yeah, because you submitted on time, you still get to go back in and fix it, so you're okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. You're exposed.
I'm sorry, give me just a minute.
Okay, you're cool. So anyone else have like chocolate chip mousse, or one that was just too hard, or one that never set up, it was too soupy, or anything else about the dessert?
I tried that apple confit, and I don't know, it said to use 10 Granny Smith apples, and I did, and it said to put them in a loaf pan, and I did all that, but the picture it shows, it looks like that's a couple of inches tall, and mine, when I took it out of the fridge, it was like maybe an inch. So I don't know, it said a loaf pan, and that's what I used. I don't know if my vessel was, too big.
And that's 10 apples. That's a lot.
Yeah, and it barely, I'm kid you not, when you see the pictures, it looks like maybe it's an inch tall, and that's it.
Okay, well, that's still okay, because it's such a rich dessert. Even if it's an inch tall, that's still lovely. You can cut it like a nice bar shape, and that would be beautiful.
I did. It looked bad. Yeah.
What if you stacked 2 bars on top of each other? How would that look?
Probably would have been okay.
I'll look
Yeah.
at pictures, Catherine, and see.
Yeah. It was difficult. It was a challenge. I mean, I enjoyed it, but challenging for sure.
How was the flavor most important? I think Catherine's got the gremlin too.
I thought that was me again.
But the taste was good, Catherine, I'm thinking.
Yeah, it was really good. I did like a crisp, I just put it out on the cookie sheet and cut it like in a rectangle to go underneath. And then that was really good component, nice crunchy crisp underneath of it. And then I did sorry, my head's not in the game today, a burnt butter ice cream. That was good.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
It was good. So a lot of new stuff. It was good. Challenging. I'm with Annabelle. This week was really challenging.
Okay, so I'm hoping week 11 and 12 kind of smack together will be a bit less challenging. So we're going to definitely go over all those details. So get you guys set up correctly so we can start out, strong. But okay, so you did the apple one. What about anybody else? We got 15 people in here. Someone must have made something incredible too. How about Sheila? I'm going to pick on Sheila. Didn't Sheila present first? Or one of the first ones?
Hey, I'm here.
I think
Or maybe
I actually is making mine now,
oh,
but doing the cherry mousse, I want to do like the truffle that you had did, the Black Forest truffle,
yes.
but I'm going to I'm making with cherry mousse instead of the chocolate mousse.
Okay.
So I'm actually in the process of doing it as we're in class at the same time. But my main problem was the flourless cake. It kind of failed. I'm going to send the pictures with it so you can see how it did, but I didn't make it. I made it as a butt cake instead of the regular round cake, and it just caved completely in.
Yes. Okay. So Sheila, and you used the formula that we used in class, correct?
Yes, I did. Exactly.
A bundt cake pan is really deep, and this cake doesn't have really any structure, only coming from the egg. So there's no flour, right? So there's no gluten development. There's no chemical leaveners. It's just a little bit of air and a lot of fat. So that's why it sets up nicely when it's very thin in the refrigerator or freezer, so that you can cut it in little thin disc or whatever shape you want to do. It will work in like an 8-inch cake pan, say 1 or 2 inches high, and it will collapse in the middle. And that's kind of the fun thing about this formula, is you can unmold it after it's chilled when it's in like an 8-inch cake, and you have that little kind of valley in the middle, and you can fill that with fresh berries and whipped cream and chocolate shavings or whatever, and you can serve it as a dessert, just cut wedges out of it. It is a wonderful dessert that way. But if you were to put it in a bundt pan, yeah, it would completely, it's too tall.
Yeah, it just, I was like, okay, I'm so done with this. So I had to really walk away from it for a day or two, because I was watching it rise while it was baking. I'm like, okay, it's doing this thing. But then when I took it out, it was like, I was like, really? Oh my God.
I'm sorry, Sheila, it's not that kind of cake, but since it doesn't have to be a total loss, because all you have to do is take the crumbs after it's baked, and you could use those as a component on your plate. So that would be fun.
Yeah, actually, that's what I'm going to do. So when I layer my dessert, I'm going to use, and I was going to use the graham crackers for the bottom part of it, but actually I think I still am, and then put the mousse in and then layer the cake crumbs on top of it and just keep layering it like that. But I'm not going to use the crumbs, but for the bottom.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. And you can even toast them up a little extra, put them back in the oven and get them really crispy, not burnt, but crispy. And it's hard to tell because it's such a dark cake, but you just get
Right.
Right, and you can use those as a topping as well. So don't throw it away. It's always going to have some type of use.
Yeah, well, I only have like a little small bag left because my husband, he kind of ate it all up. So he just took a spoon and just was eating it out of the pan. So I'm like, leave me some.
That's nice. Yeah.
So it was delicious, but it just caved right in. I was just so upset.
Well, this time it's going to be perfect. Next time you make it again, do it in a thin pan. You'll be completely fine.
Okay.
Well, thanks for sharing, Sheila.
No problem.
Did that really fast.
Chef, I think you're just a little bit quiet. I thought it was my end, but it looks like Heather's having the same issue.
He's a little quiet. Okay, let me see. I'm having issues with my sound too.
I don't know what's up today, man.
I'm using the external mic and it's been really fine. Let's see. Let's try the webcam mic.
You just sound like you're really far away.
I am in Vermont. That's pretty far away.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Can you hear me now?
No, it's the same.
Okay, now I'm on the internal mic. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, much better.
Okay, well,
Perfect.
the thing is the volume automatically readjusts itself and goes back down to nothing. So what sounds loud now will sound like nothing in a minute.
That's what happens to me. Are you on a Mac?
I'm running on Chrome.
Yeah, it shoots your sound. I always have to go into my settings and turn my sound back up because it just shoots it down.
Okay, so now I'm probably low again.
You're fine. On my end, you're fine.
Okay, let's see how that works for a minute, and then we'll try. With 3 different microphones, do you think I could get one to work? I don't know. So, well, let's get into week 11. We're going to be talking about the sketch. And before we do all of that, I want to start planting the seed in your head about weeks 11 and week 12. So we have the sketch, and then we have a trio of desserts. The trio of desserts is going to be 3 miniature desserts. We talked a little bit about it over the last couple of weeks just to get you guys thinking about it and prepped. So hopefully you guys have been putting some plans together. But I want to talk about prep lists, how to deal with this, and I want to talk about sketches. And most importantly right now, I'd like Chef Jeannie, if you're ready, to show your wonderful presentation on the do's and don'ts and all the ins and outs of making a trio-style dessert. So this is really wonderful. Chef,
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Wait, Chef, before you do it, I would like you to say a few words about yourself so these guys know who you are.
Sure. Well, my name is Jeannie Stevenson. This will be my first appearance teaching online. I have been teaching in culinary schools for the past 6 years. This is my 4th school. I love being a chef instructor. I've been a pastry chef since I was about 21. And a fun thing to know about me before I was a chef, a lot of students will say, well, what did you do before you were a chef? Well, I was a kid, but I also worked on a dude ranch, leading horseback trail rides and driving the wagons and the sleighs. So that was my life before cooking. That's just something fun to know about me.
Cool.
Yeah. I specialize in cake decoration. That's my favorite thing to do. I had an interesting career working in Colorado and Florida and Chicago and all kinds of restaurants and high volume bakeries and hotels. I worked in a 5-star resort in Colorado Springs. That was very fun. But now I'm teaching, so. Anyway, this is my first time teaching online, so I'm sorry if I have some technical difficulties. And there's a good chance the black curtain will fall down at some point. So I made a presentation regarding plated desserts, which is geared towards dessert trios or sample platters. So I'm going to screen share with you, and we'll just go through a couple slides at a time, and then we can discuss. So if anybody has anything to say or anything to add or questions, please feel free to chime in at any point. So here we go.
Thank you, Chef.
You're welcome. Do we see it?
We see it.
Awesome. So I would like to say that my first experience with a dessert trio was when I was working at a Harrah's Casino in Indiana. The head chefs of the company, they said, I want you to bring your 3 best desserts for this client to pick one of. And incidentally, they liked all 3, so they decided that I would serve them all 3 for their party. What they didn't tell me was that I was going to serve all 3 on a small plate. So that was my first experience, and I had to kind of figure out from there how to take these 3 plated desserts, separate plated desserts, and put them onto one plate. Make a long story short, it didn't go very well. I don't think I was proud of the end product, but it just kind of got me thinking for the future. So first thing you want to do is you want to stick with a theme. You want to kind of avoid just putting random things on a plate just for the sake of it. Here I have listed that you can pick a theme, kind of like the dessert's country of origin. I have this Italian dessert right here. You've got cannolis, tiramisu, and a frangelico cheesecake. Frangelico is an Italian liqueur. So sticking with the theme of the dessert country of origin is really popular. You can also go with the theme of the event. Like, for example, a Winter Wonderland baby shower. I did that at a catering company in 2008. I think that was a lot of fun. The clients wanted to see all white desserts themed towards the winter. 3 desserts on a plate, so that was fun to do. In addition to country of origin or the type of event, you could also go with flavor profiles. This here is mango. You've got mango sorbet in the middle, mango cheesecake, a mango fritter with dehydrated coconut. Anyway, stick with the theme and don't just pick random things. You want to kind of think of like, how do they relate to each other? Anybody have anything to say about that? No?
Yes, I have problems with plating because I'm not so creative. So I don't know what to do.
You have problems with plating and what did you say?
Yes, it's like I don't know how to put it together. Like the plating that I did this week, I struggle a lot, but it not came out how I expected. It's not elegant or sophisticated. So I have trouble in decorations.
I have a lot of students saying that they have trouble making their plates elegant. And one of the tips that I always have is that you want to try to not make your plating design too deliberate. If you make it really deliberate and you really try to draw on the plate or purposefully put things in a certain place, it's going to look worse if you make a mistake. So if you just kind of, more contemporary plating is where you scatter things across a plate in a random or organic fashion, or if you were to make a piping bag with a very small hole and start up high and kind of, you know, drizzle your sauce on the plate so it falls a little bit more organically onto the plate. I find that that's one trick for making the plates more elegant instead of, you know, deliberately like drawing certain things. That's kind of old-fashioned anyway. Chef Paul.
I totally agree. Doing things organically is as naturally as you possibly can. Just be relaxed. And again, if you guys put things down on the plate and you don't like it, you can pick them back up and you can do it over. You're not stuck with the one plate that you first do. So maybe just do your plate up design first. So you have a little extra sauce made for practice, and then get your plates out. And again, the plate might be your inspiration for the dessert. So if you want to do like a piece of glass or a tile or a rectangle plate or a triangular plate, or even if it's a round white plate, the plate might just start to give you a lot of great ideas. And then start saucing the plate without your desserts on it. Remember, do the sketch first. That's going to kind of give you an idea, and you can move all that stuff around and then do your plate up. And if you don't like it, do it again. And if you don't like it, do it again. And like Chef said, do it naturally. Just kind of let things fall in place and then take a look back. Maybe ask somebody else in the house their opinion too. You know, it's always good to get feedback. Show us pictures like, hey, what do you think of this plate up? And then we can tell you, you know, but again, it's up to the individual. I always err on less is more, because you don't want to make it so busy that you can't see anything. You know, it's just too crazy. But just let it happen naturally, and don't fret, and don't feel like I'm not artistic, I can't do this. That is BS. You guys can all do this. It just takes a little practice. Just ask.
I think with also like with the trios and even just like, you know, just a regular plated dessert, it's a little bit different than with deconstructed. With deconstructed, there tend to be a lot of components, which can feel a little bit overbearing. But when you're doing, like when you go into this, like Chef said, simplicity. If you just have like your sauce, your main component, and a garnish, you can start there and make it very, you know, very elegant, very composed without all the multiple kind of components on the plate. So I think, like from what I've seen just kind of in classes, I think that students tend to get more of a grasp on the trio than with the deconstructed, just because it's a little bit more organized than the deconstructed is. So I hope that, you know, that will be the same for you, Annabelle, that it'll just click a little bit more because you've got component, sauce, garnish. It just makes it a little bit easier to kind of get into the world of plating that way.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Just look
Chef
for
T.
examples.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, but look at other examples. It's okay to look at other people's work and emulate what they're doing. Then you can make it your own. You can be like, oh, I like that idea, but I'm going to switch this around. And then it becomes yours. But just start looking, reading, going online. There's Pinterest. There's like so many places you can look at different designs. And then you can start to mimic those. And then you start creating your own. Chef, you want to go back to the presentation?
How many sauces we need to have in the trio?
Chef Sinead said 2, so that's it.
At least 2 sauces and some type of crunchy something going on your plate.
The sauces has to be inside the dessert. It can be inside. If I do a puff pastry with a cream chocolate sauce inside it.
Well, you know what, Annabelle, I'm going to have Chef Jeannie continue with her slides because she's going to cover a lot of that stuff. And then at the end, we can hit all those good questions, okay?
Okay.
Kind of piggybacking on what you just said about looking at other people's designs, I wanted to say that I like to look on Instagram. There's a channel called Art of Plating or something like that, and they've got so many really cool videos on just different ways to put sauce on a plate. Not even the dessert, just sauce. There's like hundreds of different videos on how to put sauce on a plate. So if you find yourself being, you know, oh, I'm just gonna draw a squiggle, there's like a lot of ways to draw a squiggle on a plate. Check out Instagram.
Thank you for that.
Go back to the presentation. So you want to make it look interesting. You really do. You want to give the plate some color and some height while keeping it simple. You see here you've got 2 sauces. That's good enough. You don't need a sauce for every dessert. Try to keep it simple. Here's my first list of do's and don'ts. You want to blend the desserts into one presentation. Don't think of 3 different desserts that you need 3 different designs on your plate. You want to utilize, you know, one plate presentation, whether it's 1 or 2 sauces. Just don't try to individually garnish each dessert. And if you do, which is fine, just make sure your plate is big enough. You don't want it to have a tiny little plate with 3 desserts and 3 different types of sauce designs, because then it's just going to look overcrowded. Like I say here, do not overcrowd the plate. Try not to let the main components touch one another. And don't present one big chunk of something and then like 2 small desserts. I see that a lot on like restaurant dessert samplers. They're going to give you a giant slice of cake or a huge ice cream sundae, and then there's a tiny cookie or, you know, a tiny scoop of something. It just doesn't make sense. You want your desserts to be relatively the same size. Another couple things to keep in mind here, kind of like the steps to creating dessert. First, you want to think about what your budget is. Captain Obvious says, you know, how much money do I have? That's going to determine what I can make. Then you want to think about what the theme is so that you're not putting random things on your plate. And here is very, very important. Think about what you're going to put your dessert on, what types of plates you're going to use or bowls. You don't want to forget that, because you might have a really elaborate design in mind, and then all of a sudden, you know, the hot foods guys, they give you a stack of salad dishes or soup bowls or something. You need to kind of ascertain from the beginning what your plate is going to be. Now, I talk about restaurants, I talk about the industry a lot, but I know that you're doing this from home. You have a little bit more freedom. Nobody's holding you back. So just try to think about your plates first, too. Your garnishes, they need to complement the dessert. Don't just put random stuff on there for the sake of putting random stuff on there. You want to give height, you already know that, and your garnishes should be edible. Now, there's a lot of things that are edible that are not necessarily palatable. Like, for example, the green on top of a strawberry. Does anybody ever eat the green on top of a strawberry? No. Another thing that you see a lot, which in my opinion is not the best thing to do, is fresh mint leaf, because that is also not palatable. You might take a bite of it and be like, this tastes really bitter or really spicy almost, and it totally ruins your dessert. It, like, mint has nothing to do with the flavor of your dessert. And then if customer was to put that in their mouth and bite into it, then their whole experience is destroyed. Just because it's green, I mean, I don't know what your opinion on that, chef, is, but I say no to fresh mint unless it's a mint flavored dessert.
Chef, can I ask a question really quick on that?
Yes.
So in our assignment this past week, I had some strawberries and I macerated them in a basil, just like a drop of basil essential oil. And since those two flavors go really well together, but I also, so on the plate, I put a couple of small basil leaves. Now, I think they're palatable. Would that be the same example as the mint, or would that be okay?
I personally think basil is a lot more friendly to the tongue. You can eat basil on a caprese skewer. You can eat basil on a salad. It's not something that's going to really ruin your experience. What do you think, Paul?
No, I agree. And things like mint, like you could use them like in a tabbouleh salad or like different types of melon salads in the summertime, but it's such a small portion compared to the bulk of everything else that you're using. So it's not, and it's taking on the dressings too. So mint works there. But on desserts, I agree. It's like so overused. It's like putting parsley on a savory dish for every single savory dish you send out of the kitchen. It's not super creative, and there's so many other options you can do out there. Fresh mint can be, it can be deep fried. It can be dried out. It could be sugared and turned into a crunchy chip using dehydrated egg white and sugar. It's kind of old school, but it makes like a little crispy chip. So that changes or makes it more palatable actually when you're eating it. So some people even will take chocolate and brush it on a mint leaf, and make little chocolate mint leaves that way. There's just different things that you can do versus just sticking mint on it because it's there and it makes a little green pop. Think of other things that you can use as a garnish.
You also have to remember that the mint, no matter how you prepare it, it just might not match the flavor of your dessert. So it's green and it makes your dessert look nice, but if somebody was to actually bite into it, think about, is that going to ruin their experience? And probably more often than not, the answer is yes. What is that?
And mint should belong in something that contains mint, to me.
Right.
Yeah, you
right.
wouldn't want mint on my apple pie. It's just kind of weird.
That would be weird. Okay. Last on this slide, here's the question. I know that for your assignment you have to put sauce on the plate, but in the future get to thinking about, does the dessert require a sauce? Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, you might serve a trio of cakes and you're like, I have a red velvet cake on the plate. Does that need raspberry sauce? Raspberry sauce is always the old standby for restaurants that have no idea what to do. They just want to throw some raspberry sauce or some creme anglaise on the plate. Sometimes desserts just don't require a sauce. Don't just put a sauce on the plate for the sake of putting a sauce on the plate. Here's one picture I found where two sauces kind of draw all the desserts together, kind of makes your eye go from one end to the other, which is really neat. Here's an example of a donut trio that they do have their own separate sauces, but you can see that the donuts are not touching each other. The sauces are not running into each other. Even though there's a lot going on this plate, it still looks really simple and clean. Everybody agree with me on that?
Totally.
Yeah. Here you go, creme brulee. I would say that I first had my first creme brulee experience when I was about 10 at a place called Bistro 110 in Chicago, and it was the most delicious thing I ever ate, and it did not come with the sauce. Creme brulee, it doesn't really, I guess you could serve it with a sauce. It's usually served with a tiny dollop of whipped cream and some fresh fruit, but here's an example of a dessert trio which just doesn't require a sauce. I used to work for an Australian lady who would always ask me, what's the sauce? What's the sauce? So that doesn't need a sauce, Debbie. Not everything has to be dipped in something.
No, and you wouldn't want to put a sauce on top because you spent all that time caramelizing that beautiful sugar, so the sauce would dilute that and make it soft again. And the whole point is to have a crunchy surface.
Exactly. Sometimes you see creme brulees served on a plate where the sauce is just kind of garnishing the plate, which is fine. You know, it's a plate garnish, but you're not necessarily going to dip your spoon into it and then drag it across the sauce. You know.
It's kind of awkward.
Yeah, definitely. So next up, I have some questions.
I was just thinking the only example where you might have a sauce is, say you were to do like a caramel garnish and maybe do like a canal shape of a baked brulee where you would remove it from like a hotel pan or something. So maybe that would be a little bit different, but that you don't see that very often either. But that's just like the exception, I would say.
I used to actually bake creme brulee in a sheet pan with foil and freeze it, and then I could cut shapes out of it and then place it onto the plate. So it could be on a plate of dessert with the whole garnish and sauce experience. So that was kind of cool. But like when you're serving it in a ramekin, it's kind of like, that doesn't really require a sauce.
That's a good tip too, chef, to put inside of a cake layer. So if you wanted to like sandwich your cake layers with a creme brulee layer, that's how you would do it.
Yep. I love that trick. It's got to be nice and frozen, though. You can't handle creme brulee when it's just cold.
Nope.
Okay. Okay, what can we use as garnishes? I'm sure you've talked about this already, but I have a few examples too. I also put a link in the chat for some green stuff if anybody wants to know what that is when I pull up that slide. This first one here, cooked sugar or caramelized sugar. You can also do this with isomalt. This one here is called bubble sugar. It's just made by sprinkling some sugar in between 2 Silpat mats and baking it. Hard cracked sugar generally doesn't have a taste. It just tastes sweet. Obviously, caramel is going to taste bitter, so just think about that when you're, making your dessert. Am I going to caramelize the sugar, or am I just going to cook it to hard crack stage? Because the two flavors are very, very different. If you make hard crack sugar, you could put a drop of food coloring in there to make it really pretty. Like if you're making a, unicorn plate or something, which is a big trend right now, you could make it, rainbow colored. I like to do that sometime, and that's also a fun way of getting some color onto the plate as well. Microgreens. This is where we replace the mint. This is where we replace the green from your strawberry. I did attach the link in the chat room for a website which kind of lists all the different microgreens known to man. But microgreens are essentially just tiny little sprouts of plants that just begin growing. So you could do this at home. You could go get seeds of your favorite types of lettuce or, any type of vegetable, really, anything that's edible. And as soon as it grows and it starts sprouting, you can cut them off and have your own types of microgreens. You see microgreens a lot on modern plated desserts, kind of sprinkled there to replace that mint leaf. Has anybody ever used microgreens before on plated desserts or on savory foods? Chef Paul has.
I do want to point something out though. You saw some edible flowers on there, and some of those are like pansies. Sometimes you'll see marigolds or even rose petals. The little pansies, we grew up calling them Johnny Jump Ups because they kind of pop up all over the place in the spring. But if you're using something like this from your yard, just make sure that they're pesticide free, because when you buy these for your business, you get these organic, so there's no pesticides. They're grown just for this purpose. So if you see some cool flowers in your yard, just be very careful about what you put on a plate.
That's really true. I haven't run into a lot of people in the industry who pull things out of their grass, but in school, we do have a lot of students, and I actually have done that in the past too. My lawn in Greensboro looked like a tossed salad. It was just all weeds. But if you go in there real fine and you could pick out the cute little ones, I use those as microgreens just for my demonstrations. But definitely make sure there's no pesticides if somebody's going to be eating it. You have streusel, which could be the old-fashioned streusel like you find on top of a muffin, or it could be like crumbled up cake that you toasted in the oven, like actually part of your dessert that you had left over if you had scraps after you sliced it or something. And streusel is great because not only is it tasty, but it gives the plate a lot of texture. And that's something that you want, especially if you have creamy desserts on your plate, you want a lot of texture. Tempered chocolate, have we gotten into tempered chocolate in this school yet?
No, it's coming up in a future class.
Okay. Tempered chocolate, which I guess you'll get to in the future, is super trendy to use as well. This design is actually really popular the past few years. But chocolate obviously tastes like chocolate, so it would be complementary to any type of flavor profile that tastes good with chocolate. And when you temper chocolate, you can make like infinite amount of designs, just depending on the equipment you have and the molds. And sometimes you don't even need molds, you just need a little parchment piping cone, and you can make long sticks. You know, you could have a piece of cheesecake with a stick that's 10 inches long, and it'll give your plate all kinds of height and elegance, and it's super easy. You just need to make sure you're using the right type of chocolate. Regular old chips from the grocery store won't do. Meringue is also one that's really trendy. You can just place some meringue on a plate and toast it with a torch, or you can pop it in the oven and dehydrate it to make like these little shards you see right here. You could make a common meringue, also known as a French meringue. You could make a Swiss or an Italian meringue, spread it out really thin, pop it in the oven around 180 degrees Fahrenheit for a few hours, dehydrate it, and then break it up into little chunks. And that, again, just like streusel, you can crush it up and sprinkle it on a plate. You can use it almost like a tuile where it, you know, it's like on top of the dessert, however you want to do it. Meringue is really fun to use. You can use other foods as garnishes. One thing that's super popular is to make dehydrated slices of fruit. You see this is a pear right here, and you can almost see through it. You would just slice a pear really thinly, dip it in simple syrup, and just like the meringue, pop it in the oven on low for a few hours to remove all the moisture. You can do that with apples. Any comments or questions?
Jeff, when you do that version with the pear, do you weight it down after it's dried to kind of iron out the edges? Because you know how they get really ruffly?
Yes, I find that they do lift up regardless of the type of oven you're using. Even if you're using a conventional oven, which has no fan, they tend to get ruffly. So you can sometimes place another sill pad on top of them while they're baking, or when they're finished baking and they're still hot, they're going to be a little bit wet still because they need to dry out. You can put the sill pad on top of there while they're drying, or you could put a piece of cheesecloth or a couple layers of cheesecloth, which will actually draw the moisture out while weighting them down. That's one of my favorite ways to do it.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah. Anybody else? I like to talk a lot.
That's good.
I would say tuiles is last but not least. Even though it's not last, there's so many things you can use as garnish, but this is the last one I'm going to be talking about. Tuiles is a French word meaning tile because they, you know, the French roofing tiles, they were kind of like these like oval shaped things, and that's what a classic tuile looks like. I don't have a picture pulled up, but I can pull up a picture in a little while. We've kind of adopted the term to mean a wafer like thin baked substance that you garnish food with. This one here, I will attach the link to it in the chat room. This tuile is made out of fondant, and it's cooked on the stovetop. It looks like it's got some sesame seeds sprinkled in it too. So that's a very fun effect. Here you have, sometimes this is called a squid ink tuile. That's a sugar-based tuile. This one is your old-fashioned tulip batter. Have you made tuiles in this class?
Yes, they did a couple weeks ago. They made anglaise and tuile cookies.
Okay. Yeah, so this would be your classic recipe right here. I have attached a recipe for this beautiful coral, almost like a lacy tuile. Water, flour, oil, coffee extract. If you want it to taste like coffee, but this is optional right here. This coffee extract does not play into the formula involved. A little bit of salt and whatever food coloring that you want. So this is super fun to make. And then your standard recipe for tulip batter. This one's got little snowflakes on it, good for winter time with winter fruits.
So pretty.
Yeah. Any comments about that so far?
Chef, would you mind sending that to the class, that whole presentation?
I will. I don't know how to do that, but I will send it to you, or
yeah,
maybe.
I can show you how. It's quick.
Okay.
Cool. Any questions, you guys? It was beautiful.
I've got a few more slides.
Oh, cool.
Do you have time?
Oh, yeah, we'll make it time.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I'm known for as a chef instructor is just being brutally honest with the students. So I don't want anybody to take this as me being rude or hateful or hurtful, but I want to say what I have to say about the product because that's the kind of education that you pay for, right? Now, these pictures that I'm going to show you are most likely amateur work, which I would see in the classroom. But I just want to point out some of the no-nos and why these aren't really the best types of things to be presenting. On this first slide, you have no creativity in your plating design. You've got three very similar textures going on here. Looks like some sort of custard, a mousse, and I can't see what is back there, but it's definitely something liquidy. There's a lot of ways to present. You've made mousse so far, so you know you could pipe it. You could probably pipe it onto a plate. You know, you could add a little bit of gelatin. There's, like I said, I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but I know just from experience that there are many ways of presenting these types of things that doesn't involve putting them into a cup. Same thing you got going on here. 3 different trifles. Now there's cake product in there, there's whipped cream, there's mousse, there's something crunchy. We can figure something else out that's a little bit more creative than just putting them in cups. Any questions about that?
I have a question, Chef. My intention is to do maybe like a Southern theme. So if I was to do like a fried pie, a banana pudding in a cup, and a cheesecake, would that be good elements to use?
What, fried pudding, did you say?
Like a fried pie, which is, it has like fruit in it, maybe like a apple or a peach.
And banana pudding in a cup and a cheesecake?
Yes.
I think so. Those are 3 very different types of desserts that would complement each other without being the exact same texture or flavor.
Okay. And then you were saying something about a sauce. So how would I add the sauce into all 3 of those different elements?
You would want to just think of all the different type of sauces that you could make that complement the flavors. Like creme anglaise, for example, is a very standard vanilla flavored sauce. Or caramel sauce, for example, might be something that matches with those 3 desserts. So you could utilize the vanilla flavored creme anglaise and the caramel sauce and then decorate your plate with that. You're never going to pour a sauce over the dessert. That's kind of a no, don't do that.
Okay, thank you, Chef.
You're welcome.
Also, with the fact that you're doing one of them in a cup, you want to kind of center your 2 sauces, one around your cheesecake and one around your fried pie.
Okay.
And then your pudding in the cup would be without sauce, right? Because it's already a soft item. So keep that in mind as well.
Okay, thank you, Chef.
No problem.
I think I just have 3 more slides. I'm just going to power through them real quick.
Okay.
And if you have any questions, just ask them right at the end. I'm just going to speed through this real fast. Okay, here again are some overcrowded plates. This one here is beautiful. I'm going to overlook the mint leaf just because I don't like it, but I'm just going to pretend it's not there. Too much sauce, way too much going on this plate. It's not necessarily ugly. There's just too much going on. They could use less sauce on this plate. This one here, it's just like a tiny little salad plate with 4 different things there. If you were to like go in there with your fork, you wouldn't even have any room to work with your fork and knife on that plate. That's just, overcrowding is a big no-no. Negative space is a good thing. Ask the chef to give you a bigger plate.
Oof.
Here we have probably the worst example. You've got cocoa powder everywhere. The only place cocoa powder needs to be on this plate is on top of this tiramisu. Key lime pie has nothing to do with chocolate, has nothing to do with cocoa powder. It's sprinkled everywhere. This is a big fat F. This is not something I would pay for either. And then you've got pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds on this plate of, I'm not sure what this is here. Maybe it's a pumpkin pie. I have no idea. But it's just ugly and it's messy and it's sloppy and you got your green on your strawberry. I'm not happy with this at all. Here you ran out of time or you just didn't think it through. It's kind of awkward and it's just kind of like, I've seen this before, chef, I didn't know what to do, so I just put it on the plate. This one, the garnish is way too big. It's overshadowing the actual dessert itself. I'm thinking this is some sort of an apple tart, like an individual tarte tatin, but we can't tell because it's covered in this giant cookie. Also, if it is an apple tart, this chocolate sauce right here, that doesn't really match the flavor profile of an apple tarte tatin, which is, I'm sure, what that is. You've got caramel sauce, which is good enough. That's it, pretty much. Present a clean plate. If you present a plate that's got fingerprints all over it and smears, I send that back automatically. It just goes right back. I'm not even going to try the food that's on the plate if the plate is dirty, especially if it's got fingerprints on it. That's disgusting, you know. Think about the design even before you start cooking. Don't cook a bunch of stuff and then try to throw it on a plate. So, you know, be prepared, do your brainstorming first. And ask yourself, would I pay for this? If I went into a restaurant or whatever type of event, would I pay for this? Like, honestly, are you going to pay money for this? And if the answer is no, try again. Make something that you would actually pay money for. That's my biggest tip to all the students, is that, you know, ultimately we're in this to make money, right? So that's
We are, yes, definitely. And that plate that had the messy cocoa all around the edge and stuff, you got to think of your servers too. Like when your customers are all dressed up and they're getting their beautiful dessert delivered and the servers are in their nice uniforms and they get their fingers all over the edge of your plate, which is covered in cocoa or powdered sugar. And then think of your customers too. They get it all over their clothing. It's just like too much. So definitely less is more. And when you guys are learning how to make garnishes, and you're going to learn how to make even more when you get into your chocolate class, just when you have that skill where you can make a bazillion different garnishes doesn't mean you want to put all of them together on the same plate. So you want to pick and choose what makes sense. But that's a very good presentation, Chef. Thank you for sharing. That's exactly what I wanted everybody to see. Perfectly done. And that's kind of takes us into next week too. So that's covering a lot of what we're doing in week 12. And remember, week 12 is that short week. So kind of consider week 11 as week 12 so that you can start working on it today if you haven't already. So that you are, you know, looking good by the end of next week and not, you know, going crazy on the way. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the sketches, because that's what is due this week. And then just to go over like a prep list really quick. Can you guys tell me what a prep list is? You know what mise en place is. So when you're creating a prep list, what does that mean? Like a production list.
Is it creating each component? Say you create your sauce, then you do your main component, just prepping those things individually.
Right, so your mise en place would come first. So say it is a creme anglaise, because we were just talking about vanilla creme anglaise. So your mise en place would be first, and then producing the sauce. And think of a timeline when you're doing it at the same time. Like how soon, if I'm going to present this, say I'm going to finish it by next Thursday or Friday. I'm going to have it completely completed and submitted, so I have a couple days to relax as the term closes. And if there's anything wrong, Chef Sinead will let me know, or Chef Paul will let me know, and we can go back and fix it because we still have time. End the block, right? Everything comes to an end. So timeline. When can I make the anglaise? Do I have to make it the day I present my dessert? No, you can make it like 4 days earlier and keep it in the refrigerator. It'll be fine. It'll taste even better as it sits, within reason. Things like final garnishes. Say you want to do a little spun sugar or something like that to put on top of your dessert. That would be something on my timeline or my prep list that I would say, like, that's the day of, because you need to make that the day of because it'll disintegrate, right, with all the moisture in the air. But cakes and bases and cheesecakes and all these different custards, a lot of them can be made in advance and frozen. Not so much the custards, but the cakes and things like that can be frozen. So you can start those today and tomorrow and get those knocked out so that you don't have to think about that. And so each day you create like a timeline. This is what I'm going to do today. This is how I'm going to store it, either frozen or refrigerated or at room temperature in an airtight container. And you list everything out like that. And then make that list and you submit it with your assignment. No, it's not a requirement to go with the week 12 assignment, but it's really nice for us to see that you're planning that way. And it's really good practice, especially if you were doing, like, you're in a bakery and you have a big catering job and you have to plan this out and you have multiple parties coming in all the time. You need to know what you can make in advance. And you guys pretty much know now how long things last. You're not in 101 anymore. So you know a custard can last up to a week in a refrigerator. A pastry cream can last for 3 or 4 days easily. Coulis, things like that can be made in advance. Caramel sauces can hold for a while. Creme anglaise in the fridge. Like, all these different things can hang out for a while. So you don't need to make it all the day of and drive yourself crazy. So start listing things out. List out your components, your mise en place, and then just attack it that way. One element at a time. And you have 3 desserts, right? So you may have desserts that only have a few components, and you may have one of your mini desserts may have 5 or 10 components, depending on, you know, how detailed you go. But you want to list all that out so you don't forget. And then your sketch, of course, which is what I'm going to talk about right now. So do you guys have any questions about putting together like a production list? You can use a Google Doc and you can just kind of list it out. Like, today is what, Tuesday? So maybe you start tomorrow. So I'm going to decide on Wednesday pretty much what I'm making. So you want to list that out, and then you want to start writing down all the ingredients you need so that you can get your shopping list put together for that, and then start thinking about how it's going to be plated. You can start sketching it out. So just each day, or by the hour, or by the quarter of the day, however you want to do it, say, I'm going to be working on this for the next 3 hours. This is what I'm doing. And it just kind of gets yourself organized that way. And some of you are really good at that, and some may have never done it before. And some people do it with their lives in general anyway, not related to food, but maybe it's balancing work, family, and, you know, all that kind of stuff, school. So you have some type of timeline or schedule for yourself each week. What do you guys think?
Can I share something with the class real quick?
Please.
It's a production list. This is my go-to design. What I do is I have a table. I write all of my desserts on the left column: chicory ice cream, praline, fudge, bananas foster, whatever it is I'm making for that particular event. And then I have the days that I have to work on it. This day is the presentation day. So then I think about which components I could make on each of these particular days until I present. So you can see some of them, like this chicory coffee ice cream. I made the base on Wednesday. I spun it in the ice cream freezer on Thursday. I presented it on Friday. That is kind of my go-to. Bread pudding, I can make the baguettes ahead of time and freeze them. I'll make the custard the day before. I'll bake it, I'll chill it, and then I'll pull it out the day of and I'll cut it and serve it. So if you guys want a copy of this too, I can send it, and then you can just delete my parts and add your own parts if you want.
That would be great, Chef. Definitely share that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And also, when you guys, I'm just looking at your cut and portion kind of column, things that need to be prepped towards the end just before presentation. When you guys are doing shapes, you know, it's good to go with triangles and rectangles and squares, just because, you know, maybe you don't care at home right now so much, but when you're doing this in a bakery, you're going to have a lot less waste versus cutting intricate shapes or like circles. You will have a lot of scraps left behind. So that's why you'll see a lot of things in triangle form or bar form or like a square or rectangle, just because there's no waste. You have no waste left behind. Very little. And maybe some, like a cheesecake, like a sheet cake of cheesecake, if you're doing like a half sheet pan, you may trim off the edges a little bit just to make sure everything lines up nicely and it's squared. And then you go in and cut your your shapes that way. But a lot of people go in with a round cutter and they just start stamping out random shapes, and then you end up with a lot of scraps left over. So it's just like making biscuits, right? So we always say, like, when you guys are making biscuits, if you want to cut them square, you have no re-rolling to do, because you just roll out one square of your biscuit dough and you cut them into squares and you have no waste. You cut them into circles, you have to re-roll the scraps that are left behind. And you ever notice they never come out as nice as the first ones? They're a little funky. Still good, but funky. Okay. Thank you, Chef. No, I'm talking too much. So some sketches. So you can do a hand sketch if you want to. You're totally welcome to do that. Here's an example. I'll move us out of the way. Ooh, that's big. So something as simple as this. Now, this isn't a trio, but it gives you an idea of the sketch. So you will have 3 desserts. And again, you don't have to have 3 independent desserts with their independent sauces. So like Chef was saying, you can totally go ahead and do a sauce or 2 that complement the entire 3 desserts together. So that will come in handy, having that theme like you mentioned. So if you're doing a tropical theme or anything like that, then you want to make sure the sauce does work with all 3. But here's an example of a sketch, and that's a Tweedle cookie on the top. You have a little sorbet here. There's a cake element, and then weren't you just saying chicory? Yeah, chicory coffee. Yeah, there's a chicory brown sugar sauce here. I don't hear chicory too often. I guess in New England, nobody talks about chicory, but it's... Chef, do you want to explain what chicory is?
It's kind of like a root that in New Orleans, they use it to make coffee. They actually steep it like coffee grounds. And that's the reason why we were making it, is because we had a New Orleans themed final buffet in class. So that's why I was making chicory coffee. It's very popular down in New Orleans.
Like Café du Monde?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Here's another example. So we have our main item in the center. We have our sauce. We still have negative space on the plate. And these are called legends, if you didn't know. So we just have little descriptors pointing to each item so that we can see what it is. So when Chef Sinead is grading all of your sketches this week, it's going to be very helpful to have the, what is this? What is that? Have arrows pointing to everything. Or you can color code it and then do like a color coded legend down below. So maybe green means, a specific thing, and then just list what that is so that we can see. But that's the idea for a regular sketch. And again, we're not expecting them to look like this. If they do, that's awesome. But if they look something in between, that's great too, as long as it's clear so that we can see what it is on the plate. And that's why the legends are important, so that we know exactly what it is. Because if we can't figure it out by your drawing, at least the arrow tells us what it is. Okay? Chef, do you have any input here, Chef Sinead?
No, you said it all. Just make sure that it's organized for me. If it's not labeled at all, I will shoot it right back to you, because I can't try to figure out, kind of what everything is. I know that we already mentioned, make sure like you have your garnish, make sure you have your 2 sauces, but just as far as your sketch goes, just make sure, I know you guys, you might not be the best artist in the world, but as long as I can see like what's going on the plate, that's the biggest thing. And then we can kind of chat, if you're have an idea of something that you might want to do, and you can let me know that, like, I think I want this to be that, what do you think? And we can chat, we can talk about it, and see the best like direction to go for you.
Okay, thank you, Chef. I just want to show you one last thing, and then we can wrap up. If I can find it. There it is. All right, so this is my crude sketch that I did in like 15 minutes because I'd never used this tool before. But when you go into your Google Drive and hit New, you can go right ahead and start making, let me see if I can do it here. When you hit New, then you go to More. So you go to scroll down to More. Okay, so hit New, and then the little drop box will come up, and then just hit More, and then it'll take you into Google Drawings. You can also search Google Drawings, and it'll bring you right there. And then it's kind of fun to play around with. So you get this like blank slate, and you can pick and choose the shapes you want right here where it says shape. And then you go over to shapes, and then you can pick like a round, and you can drop it in here. And you can blow this up. You can make it as big as you want. And you can turn this into your plate. So if you want to do a round plate or a square plate, you can go ahead and use this, okay? So that's what I did here. Go away, okay. So I did it with a rectangle, and I just opened it up so I have like more of a platter. And then going into shapes, I just kind of picked and choose the shapes that I wanted for my desserts. So a round can obviously represent any type of dessert. You will see all kinds of cool shapes in here. So you can just feel whatever kind of represents your dessert shape that you're doing, you can put that in. And then just kind of pop them in here. And you can move them around. You can make them bigger. You can make them smaller. You can add color if you want to. So if you wanted to change the color, like say this garnish up here, you can go into fill color and say that's going to be like a little Tweedle cookie in there, and I want it to be kind of a neutral color, you know, something earthy. You know, I can add a little bit of brown to it, like so. And here you can actually do drawing, so you can sketch out what you want to do. You can pick your line colors here. There's all kinds of fun little tools that you can just click on. There's a text box too, so you can add that, and then you can type in or do dessert sketch. And then you can move that around if you want to. You know, there's like all kinds of fun stuff. Hello. Why do you hate me so? Okay. So you can move things around. It's just something fun to play around with. I was starting to color things in a little bit earlier, but then I went back to the white background just so I could show you. But this is border color, and then this is fill color. And if I'm doing like a blackberry gas streak, you're probably wondering, what is that? It's a caramel sauce that is deglazed. It's actually caramel that's deglazed with some type of acid. So typically you see a lot of vinegars used, and then a lot of berries can be added, and all this gets cooked down and it thickens up to this beautiful sauce. You'll see it in the savory world. You'll see it in pastry world. And then so this one I was just going to fill in with a color. So it's as simple as that. And if you make mistakes, you can just undo everything and go back and try it again. But it's just kind of fun to play around with. I don't know, chefs, have you ever used anything like this? Chef Sinead?
No, this is the first time I'm seeing it. It's really, really helpful because I know a lot of people feel a little bit unsure of doing it by hand, but this is really cool.
Yeah, and I stink at this, and I spent like 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes just playing around, but you guys are probably going to be way more creative than I am when it comes to doing this stuff. I'm from the old school of sketching it out. So this was new to me, but it's available for all of you. You guys all have it. You all have the Google, so may as well use it. All right, any questions about the sketch? Because that's what's due this week. And guess what? You can get started on that right now, and you can submit that early. And if your sketch changes a little bit, that's okay too.
Yeah, I'm not gonna like hold you to like, this doesn't look like your sketch, but no, that's not my purpose.
No, but you should be proud of your sketch and then see how it compares to your dessert for week 12. In fact, I would resubmit the sketch just in with your photos when you submit week 12's trio, just so that, you know, we can kind of see. And if it doesn't look the same, like you completely change your mind, that's okay. We're not gonna, like you said, we're not gonna be like, hello, this isn't what you showed us last week. No, because we know things change. But the best thing to do is get started now. Start coming up with your ideas if you haven't already, and get them going. Please do not wait until the end of next week. And then next week's class, we'll do a little review of exactly what's due. But by then, you guys should be really well underway with finishing up things, because we're only going to have a few days left after the class, really. All right, we've gone over our time a little bit, but that's okay. I had a lot of stuff to cover. So Chef Jeannie, any last words?
No, sorry for talking so much, and thank you for listening.
No, that's okay. Sometimes. Chef Sinead?
Yeah, don't overthink it. I think that with week, what are we in right now? Week 10. I think that might be what's going on, a little bit of overthinking. That's why I'm not seeing too many submissions. So I want you guys to just kind of relax a little bit. You know, if you haven't turned in week 10, get that in. And then like Chef said, start working on your sketches, get that in, and then you can immediately go into your production for week 12. All right. So just kind of relax, stop overthinking. It's a lot of fun, I promise.
You're right. Last thing, there are 2 knowledge checks this week, just so you guys know. You've always had 1 each week. Now you have 2, because it's kind of a light week when you're doing the sketch, although it's not that late because you're starting your week 12 too at the same time. But anyway, 2 knowledge checks, so make sure both of those get taken care of. And again, the forums, you got to go back. If you didn't do the initial post or the 2 peer responses, go back and fix them, shoot me a message, and I will go back and adjust your grade, okay? So take advantage of that time to do it now, because those forums are really heavy on your average. And then last thing, makeup assignments, Chef, I believe, are all due. If you're going to use any of the makeup windows, you have 3 of them. So if you had an assignment below 60%, one you just didn't like the grade, or one you missed completely because something came up that week, you have until next Thursday, correct, Chef, to submit them.
Yeah, I'm looking at the calendar right now. Yep, next Thursday, the 15th, all of your makeups are due. All right, so start getting those in. You do not have until the 18th. They're all due on the 15th.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, chefs. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing these sketches this week. So start getting them in today, tomorrow at the latest maybe, and then you won't have to think about it. And you can move on into the trio, and that would be great.